So my name is Mike. I am a sport coordinator here with Athletics and Recreation at Seneca College. And again, this is Wellness Wednesday, and what I'm here to talk to you guys about, and hopefully I don't want to put you to sleep, so I'll try to make it brief while also informative for you, is the newly released Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines, which sounds so fascinating and exciting and thrilling. So hold on to your hats. Sorry, that was a really bad joke. Anyway, but it is important, and everyone should be informed with this, as it affects our health and longevity and overall wellness. Okay. So previously, the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology, which is actually my governing body, and the Public Health Agency of Canada, and Participation had physical activity guidelines, which was your basic movement, what was recommended, how much aerobic, cardiovascular activity, and strength training, and just general physical activity should we be getting. And then they partnered up with Queen's University, and basically they came out with the 24-hour guidelines for movement, which was more specific to kind of what 24 hours of your day should look like and how that should incorporate physical activity, but also now including sleep, which throughout the years was neglected as obviously being just as important as physical activity, as exercise, but we were always promoting exercise, which we still are, obviously, but sleep is just as important, in recovery and rest for both physical and mental health. So get your sleep. So the 24-hour Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines has actually just been released as of like a week and a half ago. So again, CSEP, the Public Health Canada, Queen's University, and Participation have now released the official guidelines. So you can actually find that on the Government of Canada's website, as well as csepguidelines.ca, and you'll find the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines. So I've actually received a sneak peek of it. So I've had it for a little bit, just being a member of CSEP. But this is something, again, really important that you should be aware of. So previously they had a 24-hour movement guideline for youth from basically toddler to 17 years old, because they were trying to, obviously improve the physical activity of children, which has plummeted significantly over the last, decade or so. And obviously there are factors for that we could get into, whether it's technology or video games or whatever. Now more than ever, with COVID and us being at home and maybe don't have access to certain facilities, we need to motivate ourselves to get active. So this couldn't have come out at a better time. And basically it's going to give you some numbers as far as what a healthy 24 hours should look like. Some of this will be common sense when it comes to sleep. We've kind of already been aware of how much sleep we should be getting. There's some truth to it, but it really all depends on your lifestyle. So this will be relative to the situation you have. But these recommendations are universal and have been, validated through vigorous research and evidence-based science when it comes to just overall sleep and activity and our sedentary lifestyles and sitting down and screen time and technology and all these things have been considered. So that's the spiel. That's the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines. Here's what they say. Okay, this was just released about a week and a half ago. And again, you can go to csepguidelines.ca to check it out. But just to summarize, when it comes to physical activity, we're talking about aerobic activity, resistance training, strength training, but we're also talking about just regular physical activity when it comes to doing housework or just walking, or even standing now is considered a form of physical activity because it's something that is preventing sitting down or being sucked into a more sedentary environment, which is sitting down and looking at a screen. So even standing up now is considered a plus. So that's how low the bar has been put is now standing is an improvement, obviously. Okay, but that'll all be included. So right now they're saying that you should be getting around 150 minutes a week. So that's roughly 20 minutes a day of physical activity. But what you should be getting is not just like standing or walking the dog, it's a combination of things. So it's moderate to vigorous aerobic activity. So what that would mean is obviously based on the intensity and the effort level, as well as maybe a target heart rate. When you are at rest, your heart rate is anywhere between 60 and 100. So if you're exercising, it will increase obviously to, let's say, 60 to 80% of your max heart rate. So it's going to go up a bit. So you should be raising that heart rate and effort level to a vigorous at the most, which is like a high intense, or moderate. So that would be slightly above a leisure walk. So you should be getting about 150 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous aerobic activity. Okay, so roughly 20 minutes a day. And now it's also encouraged or recommended, again, based on this research, that should also include resistance training or strength training, where you're strengthening the muscles of your body. Okay, and this will all go towards preventative measures for hypertension, bone health, things like this. Okay, so that's physical activity. The next is sleep. Okay, and again, this is something that's always kind of been on the back burner when it comes to what a 24-hour period should look like, where you have someone who works out every day for 2 hours a day but doesn't sleep well. So you got to have both. So there's a middle ground, or a gray area, if you will. That's kind of where the bar is now set. So sleep, getting 7 to 8 hours of good quality sleep on a regular basis with consistent bed and wake up times. So, and again, some of this will sound like common sense, but now this is evidence-based. So this is no longer speculative advice. This is now evidence-based research that has now been released to the public. So the sleep should be between 7 and 9 hours, but consistent. So obviously you don't want to get 7 hours one night and then 10 the other night and then 4 another night. That sleep has to be consistent. Okay, and so some people will ask, well, what time should I go to bed, or what time is ideal for wake up? And that really doesn't matter as much as the consistent amount you're getting and the quality of that sleep. Okay, now there's a lot of things that can be considered for what quality sleep means, and what we call now sleep hygiene. We're actually going to be putting out a post on the next week or so regarding these sleep hygiene methods that you can do, which is obviously not looking at your phone right before you go to bed, or screens, or anything that would stimulate you, like playing video games or watching something right before going to bed. So there's things that you could do, like reading or even light music, which can help. So those are another day. But so sleep is 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep consistently. And then the last one is sedentary behavior. So sedentary behavior is basically the opposite of physical activity. Okay. So sitting down, obviously at work or at school, you don't want to accumulate more than 8 hours a day. So that'll include no more than 3 hours of recreational screen time. So TV, you're watching Netflix, your favorite show, and you're binging. 3 hours is over 24-hour day. Okay, so I repeat, no more than 3 hours in a span of 24 hours is what you should be getting. Okay, and then yes, breaking up long periods of sitting as often as possible. If you can, every 20 to 30 minutes, just get up or do even just some chair stretches where you are increasing the circulation, things like that. So those are the three things that we are now recognizing for 24-hour movement guidelines. Physical activity, 150 minutes a week, or around 20 minutes a day, of a combination of light activities like walking or cleaning the house, moderate to vigorous aerobic activity. How do you compensate for online? So yeah, that's physical activity, and then the sleep is 7 to 9 hours, and the sedentary behavior is no more than 3 hours of recreational screen time, or no more than 8 hours of continuous sitting. And sorry, I think there's a question here. How do you compensate for online school and work? I do both. Absolutely, of course. And yeah, people are going to have different situations where you might not have that option. It might not be as flexible, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to go run a 5K or anything anything like that. It's really just breaking up the continuous sitting down when it comes to sedentary behavior. So really it's even if you're in your chair and then you do school all day, you're doing online studies, and then you're doing work again virtually with now the situation that we have. So you might not have the certain physical activity opportunities that you would have before, like walking to work, taking public transportation where you're walking and standing. Now we're at home and we're sitting down a lot. So some recommendations I could give you is, like I said, some chair stretches, chair activities. There are certain things, as silly as they sound, where you can obviously, we encourage doing some kind of chair stretches, chair activities. Like it might sound like it's like for the older population, but we all benefit from it. And as well, if possible, try to set up your laptop or your computer or where your office is on a raised surface so you're able to stand. Again, doesn't really sound ideal or comfortable, but even standing now is considered something of an improvement when it comes to improving our physical activity and reducing sedentary behavior. So if you're able to set up your computer on a countertop that's ergonomically as correct as possible, that would not have your posture be poor, is to set that laptop up and then stand while you're working. There's little things we can do. It's obviously not our ideal situation, but these are now the guidelines. So these are just recommendations, right? So we're trying to encourage you to stick with those. Okay, so those were the three things: physical activity, sleep, and sedentary behavior. And these are all obviously now proven to, again, common sense, but lower the risk of early mortality, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, several types of cancer, improvement of symptoms of anxiety and depression, dementia, and weight gain. So these are all things that if you follow these criteria for the 24-hour movement guidelines, you will significantly reduce your chances of these things. Okay? Absolutely. Yeah, we can always do something like that. So we had a question here regarding stretches for sitting and seated activities you can do, so that if you are stuck at a desk that you can do. So we can definitely, absolutely, maybe do a wellness post for that. So great question. And then obviously the benefits are improved bone health, cognition, quality of life, and physical function. So there's nothing new here. This is not news. There's no breaking news that says, hey, physical activity is good for me. We obviously know that, but now these are the evidence-based guidelines based on what 24 hours should look like. Okay, so again, go to csepguidelines.ca, or even the Government of Canada, the Public Health Agency. They have this as well. You can download the pamphlet for the 24-hour movement guidelines. And they do actually have them for youth, children ages basically 0 to 4, 5 to 17 years old. And then the adult one, which is the one I'm referring to, is 18 to 64. And then they have one that's more specific to chronic conditions as well as pregnancy. Okay, so the guidelines will be a little bit different when it comes to physical activity, sleep, and sedentary behavior for certain populations. Okay, so they have them now for all groups. Okay, so hopefully I didn't bore you too much. So that was the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines, and we will post that for you as well in the near future. And so thank you for joining me. Have a good rest of the afternoon, and be well. All right, take care.